that don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD and Melissa.
Hi guys, welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my wonderful and talented co-host.
Hi JD.
Melissa.
How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
We're super busy, and we've had a lot of scheduling conflicts with this particular podcast. So I'm really happy that we're here. And now we have a little bit of weather problems, but I think we're going to make it through just fine. I'm super excited to introduce you guys to Ryan Chaw. And Ryan is a pharmacist. Well, first off, let's just say he started out working multiple jobs to get the money, and while going to school, became a pharmacist, kept this crazy life up until he was able to retire himself from being a pharmacist, which is great. And now he's full-time real estate investor, and his strategy is pretty unique. It's something that is out there, but we're definitely looking forward to getting his take on it. Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, and thank you for the invite to the podcast.
You still are a pharmacist too, still, right? Do you still do that on the side as like your side hustle?
So I actually retired last year as a pharmacist.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I worked as a pharmacist for about 8 years. Yeah, and I built the portfolio up while I was working as the pharmacist.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And well, Ryan, for those in our audience who maybe don't know your origin story, if you could give us a rundown of how you got into this and then where you're at now.
Yeah, so my grandpa actually started off investing in real estate for our family, and he had a lot of doors slammed on his face back then because I guess there's a little bit of racism against Chinese back in the 50s. But he was able to buy a couple properties in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the last one that he bought, it was like a set of 6 flats. And my parents were recently able to sell that. I mean, back then it was like 100,000, but they're recently able to sell for like 3.6 million. Right. So as we all know, that real estate is one of the best ways to create generational wealth. And I was inspired by my grandpa to get into real estate as soon as possible. So back in 2015, I graduated with my doctorate of pharmacy, and I started buying as many rentals as I could. And as you mentioned, I worked a lot of overtime, a lot of double shifts is what we call it. So I worked in the hospital from 7:30 a.m. to about 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night. I did that for the first, I guess, 2-3 years or so. On and off, and try to save up as much as possible so that I could buy as much as I could. And so I just bought one property per year in California. My very first one was a $262,000 house in Stockton, California, back in 2016. And I just continued to go along that path. And I used a very specific method for investing. I would rent out by the room to college students. So I would typically take these larger homes, 1,500 square foot or larger, and I would add 2 or 3 bedrooms to them to get it to 5 or 6 bedrooms. And then I would rent out each bedroom for $600 to $700 a month, typically. And so if you have a 6-bedroom house, that's about $3,600 a month, up to $4,200 a month if you're renting near the $700 per month range.
Yeah, so I think it's a great strategy, and I have a ton of questions about it. But the first one that comes to mind, when you say you're adding on these additional bedrooms, are you cannibalizing the co-living space, like the dining room, living room, into those bedrooms, or are you leaving the kitchen, the family areas, and then building on additional bedrooms?
Yeah, cannibalizing is a strong word, but what I do is a lot of these students, they actually hang out most of the time in the room or they're at school. So they, watch Netflix in the room. They don't necessarily need a huge common space. I do have a common space, but let's say there's a family room, a living room, dining room, and an office, right? I will keep one of those as the common space and the rest can be converted into bedrooms potentially, as long as we maintain a good bedroom to bathroom ratio, that there's not too many bedrooms for only like a single bathroom, right? But yeah, I've never really had complaints ever since I started doing this. I'm currently at 15 rentals and I've never really had a complaint saying that, hey, there's like no common space. I always have some sort of common space, but I don't necessarily need a family room, living room, dining room, and office. Right?
So when you say you have 15 rentals, you mean you have 15 properties, but the number of renters that you have is 15 times 3 or 15 times 6 or whatever the different bedrooms. So I am curious.
Yeah, I have 90 tenants. Yes.
Yeah. That's almost, that's like a small apartment complex or a medium-sized apartment complex, really.
Right.
And now the other thing that it's so similar to short-term rentals, I feel like there must be a season. Are you maintaining these? Are they staying booked and rented during the summer months or when the end of the school year, or how do you navigate through those ups and downs?
Yeah, essentially, I get everyone onto August to August leases. So they are 1 year leases and they can always sublet during the summer. So a lot of times the schools will have a lot of summer school students. And so they'll just sublet during the summer if they're not going to be there themselves. But with that being said, a lot of these students are in graduate programs because the campus usually only provides housing for undergrads. They don't really provide as much housing for grad students, or they're not obligated to. So a lot of these graduate students end up coming to me because they don't have a place to stay on campus and they're just like really desperately looking for housing. In fact, there's almost always a shortage of housing for graduate students in the areas that I invest in. And so basically these graduate students, they'll stay throughout the year. They'll be doing research. They might be in a doctorate or law degree program, like a professional program. And so most of the time they're studying, they're pretty much at the house throughout the whole year.
Okay. And well, that makes it makes good sense. But I correct me if I'm wrong, but you're managing all of these units and all of these tenants yourself right now. You're not contracting out management or doing anything like that. And I'm sure, especially in August, that probably gets pretty labor intensive. Tell me what your management process looks like. I'm curious about how you're vetting tenants, how you're handling disputes amongst people that are strangers that are living in a house together, all of that kind of stuff.
Right. So I scaled up all the way to 5 or 6 houses while I was working as a full-time pharmacist. So first like 5-6 years, I was full-time pharmacist and I was able to do this on the side. And so I had maybe like around 30 tenants or so. By then I was able to self-manage that. Once I started getting past that, I was like, okay, I definitely need to start creating a team behind this. So I started hiring some virtual assistants. I started giving them smaller tasks, like make sure you post our ads on Zillow, on Facebook groups, etc. And then I slowly amped up the tasks I would give them when they did well. I had to go through at least, I want to say at least 7 or 8 employees before I found some good ones. I fired about half of them, unfortunately, because they were just not the best fit. But I was able to outsource a lot of the VA work to some people in the Philippines who, we pay a good amount for what in the Philippines is considered high income, actually. So they're getting high income and, they're working full time for me. And so it's kind of like a win-win situation. They do kind of the marketing, the customer service, any maintenance requests, a lot of coordination for the house tours, that type of stuff. Although a lot of times I also have a head tenant at the house who can kind of do the house tours as well.
That's great. And as far as, are you running into tenant disputes? What happens when somebody doesn't like somebody's boyfriend? What kind of rules do you put in place to keep the peace?
Sure. So I definitely have like a set of house rules that I think that's very important to have. And I have my virtual assistant kind of go through the house rules with them just so that they're aware what they can and can't do or shouldn't be doing. And the biggest dispute I would say might be over dishes. You know, when tenants don't do the dishes, they stack up, and then everyone's worried about the sanitation at the house. So what I do is I do quarterly cleanings. I'm actually starting to offer a service, a dishwashing service, basically. But we do have dishwashers at the house, so we try to counsel the tenants. Put the dishes in the dishwasher at least, and don't leave anything in the sink. That solves like pretty much 80%, 90% of like tenant disputes. But I do have a process for disputes, right? I basically talk to the tenant and I will tell them, hey, why don't you talk face to face first with the person that you're complaining about? Have that conversation, say why it upsets you, and come up with an actionable plan. Then implement the plan within the next 2 weeks. And then if you're still having issues, come back to me, and then I'll go ahead and talk with them. Or potentially, if it escalates further than that, I could even talk to one of the parents, because a lot of these students, they have like co-signers, they all have a parent behind them, or I'll have their parent contact as well as part of the lease. And so I can always go to the parent if the kid is like really not being responsible for maintaining a clean premises.
Sure. I really like that idea. Most of the kids that are going to be in graduate level, they're probably relatively responsible if they've made it to that level, at this point. But having the parents who are on the hook for the bill or damages and all of that kind of stuff, and maintaining a line of communication with them, I think is genius and a really big point.
Oh yeah,
Melissa, if you got a call because one of your daughters wasn't doing the dishes,
I would be the parent getting the call for sure, no matter what level they were at.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess my question now is, are you strictly in California, or you have different colleges? How are you picking the towns, the types of colleges, and then most importantly, how do you decide whether or not a property fits this model?
Yeah, those are three really good questions. So I'm in California, I'm in Alabama and Ohio right now. And so I've been able to kind of replicate this model in other cities. I started out in California the first 5 years, but then I was like at a point where I'm like, I got to grow. So I got to make the decision eventually to invest out of state, so that the world becomes your oyster then. But with that being said, my California houses do very, very well. And I get probably more wealth building in my California properties because there's so much appreciation in California. It's crazy. So I still have 5 in California. I have 9 in Ohio and 1 in Alabama right now. As far as how do I choose the college, that's a really good question as well. Basically, what I do is I look for the top colleges. I'll go to the U.S. News top colleges list in whatever state that I'm interested in investing in. And I'll go down the colleges and I'll look at which colleges have a lot of graduate programs, what's the graduate enrollment, what's the tuition, and how many students are at the school in general, right? And so typically I want to see a school that has at least 3,000 enrolled, at least like $15,000 in tuition, because if the parents are able to afford the $15,000 in tuition, they're able to afford another $7,000 in rent typically. So I really target those high-end schools that accept well-rounded students, studies very hard, straight A's maybe even, and they're really looking for that doctorate degree, pharmacy, dentistry, nursing, etc. So those are the colleges I really look for. I really love ones that have a lot of graduate programs for that, law degree, etc. And then as far as the house itself, I target larger square footage houses that are within a 5-minute driving distance to campus, because the number one thing students care about is convenience. I would say up there's like a top 3. So one thing that's very important to them is how close you are to the school. right? If I'm waking up for my 8 a.m. classes, I don't want to go wake up at 6:30 a.m. to do a, hour long commute or whatever, right? I want to be as close as possible. So I really try to be like walking distance or 5-minute driving distance from campus. And as far as the square footage, that's important because it determines your cash flow, right? So if I can get 6 people in the house, that's kind of like a sweet spot, because if I get 2 full bathrooms that are shared and 6 people at the house, that maintains like a 3-person to 1 bathroom ratio, which I find is pretty ideal for student housing. Once you kind of go over that, then people kind of feel like it might be a little bit crowded. So I keep it at 6 if I can. And for that, you need a certain amount of square footage. I divide the square footage by 300 to get the total number of bedrooms I can get at a house. So if it's 1,500 square foot, I divide that by 300. That means I could get 5 bedrooms at a house. If it's 1,800, divide that by 300, I typically can get at least 6 in there. So basically, that's the strategy. I mean, I also try to make it affordable for students. So I will do some market research, see what people are charging around the area, see what are the go-to neighborhoods that students are talking about. Reddit is very good for that. It's kind of like a student forum, essentially. And so it's like, when a student tries to figure out where they're staying for off campus, they ask the upperclassmen, where did you stay? What areas are safe? They ask for advice from others. So you really want to get into the student's head and learn what they're talking about word of mouth. What neighborhoods are they talking about? And so I go to Reddit for that.
Yeah,
Genius.
yeah,
That's really good.
that is awesome. Okay, so now, besides adding the additional bedrooms, do you do any renovations to the home? Like, are you building cubbies for them in the bathroom, or what other things are you doing to make it attractive to group living?
Right. So I provide all furnishings. All my places come fully furnished with a mattress, the study desk, a chair, so a nightstand, some like closet and drawers, for example. So it's pretty light renovations, though. I'm just putting up some drywall, framing drywall in the doorway. As far as like major renovations, if I have to convert a half bathroom into a full bathroom, because maybe it's a 1.5 bathroom house, I might have to convert. Or maybe one of the bathrooms is a private bathroom. I might have to open it up to the rest of the house so that they have enough bathrooms to share. But those are kind of the main renovations I do. It's generally speaking very light renovations. To put up like a framing and drywall, it could be like 1,500 to 2,500 per room that you do, but you make up for that within a few months of the rent, because the rent's 700. So after like 3 months, it basically pays for that drywall and framing.
So are you doing utilities, or are you providing Wi-Fi or internet access? What does that look like in your model? Are they each contributing X number of dollars a month to utilities, or how does the utilities?
Right. Yeah, so essentially they divide it among themselves. If you have a group of friends, like let's say a group of 6 friends that come in at the house, they want to handle the utilities themselves, then they can put the utilities under their name and then they distribute it among themselves. If they're not friends, which is I would say most cases, what I do is I add up the utility bills at the end of the month. I divide it by however many students there are, like 6 students, 5 students, and I'll send them their portion of the bill. And then they pay it along with the next month's rent. So they pay it at the same time as the next month's rent, just so that they remember to pay it.
That's great.
Internet, all of that stuff.
Yeah. What kind of software are you using to manage? Are you using some sort of property management software? Are you just using spreadsheets? You're having your VAs tally up stuff for you? What are you doing to manage income and expenses?
Yeah, I mean, Google Sheets are great. A lot of our stuff is in Excel spreadsheets. We do have a bookkeeper who uses QuickBooks to kind of sort through all the transactions, and it has an ability to label every tenant so it can kind of identify the rent that's coming in. We're looking into eventually maybe doing something like Buildium, but I'm still looking into if it's going to be worth it. I actually did create some, it's called Google App Scripts, which I created this email autoresponder. So we get leads through email, and the autoresponder can identify the tenants, what house they apply to, and automatically send them out an email. So I have something through, again, it's called Google App Scripts, and I use ChatGPT to kind of write the program for us.
Nice.
So, you can create a lot of automation in your business through just like simple programming like that. I obviously use Zillow a lot. I check it every day for any properties that pop up that meet my criteria. But other than that, we also have Zendesk. So if we have maintenance, we have Zendesk for the tickets. So Zendesk creates like a ticket, kind of like if you're contacting IT, they ask you to create this ticket, right? And so a ticket gets created and gets sent to our contractors. And then the contractors follow up on the ticket. They write comments and they say when it's completed.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. And as far as rent collection, are they automatic draft from their parents' account? Are you having to beat on 90 different people's doors to collect it in campus bucks and pennies? Or what does the rent collection look like?
Yeah. So what's great about students is they are very tech savvy. So a lot of times we just do electronic payments. I like using Zelle a lot. But there, a lot of programs out there like Billion, for example, will just do automatic rent collection, ACH payment, that type of stuff. But generally a lot of people can just pay through Zelle. Or there's another app out there for international students. It's called Wise, WISE.
Oh, yeah. We use Wise.
And so if they have, and I get a lot of international students, obviously, from India, Spain, Brazil, all over the place. And so what's nice about Wise is it will convert the currency to US currency and pay you. And it's kind of like Venmo, Zelle, similar, very similar.
Yeah. We use that to pay our VAs.
Oh, nice. Yeah, exactly. Great software.
Well, that's great. So, we know where you're kind of at now. What is your plan or path? Are you content with your 90 tenants? Are you looking to build? I know you're doing some teaching, some coaching and stuff, and I'd like to hear about that too. But where are you going from?
Yeah, definitely. So, how I got into the coaching, I'll just talk about that for a second. I realized that this is a very powerful method. If you can get $3,600 or $4,200 in rental income on a house where the mortgage is only $1,500 to $2,000 a month, you could be making, most of my students are making at least $1,500 a month in cash flow. That's after expenses and all of that, right? Up to $2,000, $2,500. I even had a student who was making $5,500 per month in cash flow in San Jose, California. Obviously, the rent's a lot higher there. And so, this is a really good method. Oh, yeah. So at the purchase price. So he bought, like, just to give you an example, he bought this $1.125 million house with like 200,000 down. And then he put in 8 to 10 tenants, actually, depend on the year. And each tenant pays $1,200. So it was $9,600 a month. But the interest rate when he bought it was super low. It was 2.75% or something like this, like really, really, really low. And he had like a jumbo loan and everything too. So he was making $5,500 per month in cash flow on that one. So it can work anywhere. It works in very expensive cities as well. But typically I aim for $200,000 to $300,000 houses. And I teach people how to do the whole process, right? From basically judging what the market demand is, what rent can I actually reasonably charge for students to actually be very interested in it. And students have a very specific budget in their head. Even if you're like $20 over their budget, they'll say, oh, I'm not interested. That's not my budget. Then you come down $20 and all of a sudden they're interested. So that's kind of how students are. They have a very specific budget. So I really, train my mentees to how to figure out, do the market research to figure out where that range is. And then we start looking at deals together and, look for red flags, do the walkthroughs together, all that type of stuff. All the way until how are we going to renovate it so that we put in extra bedrooms, market it, and then manage it. So that program is Newbie Real Estate Investing. And so you can, reach out to me at www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide, which has a free guide on how I do all of this. And it goes through the whole strategy and everything. But I, find a lot of people out there who are very interested in starting a student housing business because of the additional cash flow that I can create, like $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month, et cetera, on a single family home. So. I felt like it was very impactful for me. It allowed me to replace my pharmacist salary. And so I wanted to show others how to do it as well, because I felt very trapped in my pharmacist job. And there's like, you want to be able to build something of your own. So you want to have something to show for all the years you worked hard at your job, right? And so real estate's one of the best ways to do it. And I wanted to provide that mentorship for others as well.
That's great. Yeah,
That's really cool.
that's awesome. Well, and as far as where you're going, what is your portfolio plans? Are you looking to own 1 billion of these rentals? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, so ultimately, I have a goal that I shoot for. I always like having a goal. So my goal is to have 100 student rentals. I'm at 15 right now, but I'm taking it one step at a time. I'm not rushing it or anything like that. I believe in being patient as an investment, as an investor. I think it's the most important trait that an investor can have is patience, right? So obviously, I grow at the pace, a good pace, but I'm also patient with it. I don't want to over leverage myself. We all saw what happened in 2008. So I think, buying one house a year was a very good start. I think it's a great start for a lot of people. It's just buy one a year and, start building a team, start building your network, and then going from there. So that's kind of what I'm doing as well.
Yeah.
Although I'm buying a little bit more than one a year now.
Yeah, no, that's great. I do think it's a very achievable plan. A lot of times we talk to people on here who are like, yeah, I bought my first single family house, and then next year I raised some money and bought a 250 unit apartment complex. And a lot of people, regular everyday people who are listening to our podcast right now, going from I bought my first single family to 1 billion units under management, and I'm working with hedge funds. That is not something that tracks logically in your brain, but with an actionable plan like you've presented today of, just do one house a year, get that one right, use the cash flow to buy the next one, and build in a steady and consistent manner, I think is phenomenal. And it's slow and steady wins the race. And then, now you're buying more than one a year and you're able to expand more, and you don't have to work it.
Yeah. And you got to retire.
Yeah. How old were you when you retired?
Right. 31.
Yeah.
Yeah. 31 was when my pharmacist salary was replaced. So I decided to retire. Now I can always go back to pharmacy, of course.
Sure. But why would you? If this is working and you're doing great with that, maybe for the love of being a pharmacist, I guess later on when you need something to do. But you got a great plan, a great program. We're really excited that you came on, and there's a ton of value here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. It's super cool. You were doing pad split before it was cool.
Yeah, before it was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I heard about pad split probably 5 years into this, and I was like, oh, that's kind of what I'm doing. But I do it specifically for students, right? And I target graduate students and medical professionals. So it's a little bit different, but yeah, it's very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing with our audience.
Yeah, of course. No problem. Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks again for the invite on the podcast as well.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.